Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started this morning. Just to make it clear, we are on day 3, Wednesday, April 2nd, and I just want to walk through the agenda with you real quick. So we're starting the day with guest speakers on socioeconomic issues of AI in agriculture. There will be a coffee break from 9:45 to 10. And then from 10 to 12, we'll have technical sessions in the breakout rooms just the same way we did yesterday. And then we will have the closing luncheon here in this room from 12 to 2 with poster awards. And then at 2 p.m., there will be multi-state project meetings. And I just want to say something about that real quick. If you are not a member of the multi-state project groups, you're certainly not required or necessarily expected to attend those, but you are welcome to attend those, and I think you will find them valuable. Even if you're not a member, you can join Hatch multi-state groups, even if you're not affiliated with the land-grant university. They're very beneficial from a networking standpoint and just from the standpoint of developing collaborations. In fact, that's how this conference originated 4 or 5 years ago, was out of one of these multi-state groups. So S1090 is essentially the AI in agriculture multi-state group. S1098 is a brand new multi-state group that's focused on autonomous systems for agriculture. Those two groups are going to meet together for 1 hour from 2 to 3, and then they're going to break up into their separate meetings from 3 to 5. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and get started with our session this morning, Socioeconomic Issues of AI in Agriculture. Our first speaker this morning is John Green, who is the director of the Southern Rural Development Center here at Mississippi State University. And John, I'm going to allow you to do a little bit more detailed introduction.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. All right, good morning. Again, I'm John Green. I serve as director of the Southern Rural Development Center, and appreciate the opportunity to be with you this morning. So this is an outline of what I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to provide a little bit of an introduction to the Southern Rural Development Center because I think it'll help provide context for my comments. Then I'm going to get into kind of a broad discussion of technological development and rural development and how we need to be somewhat more intentional about how we think about these issues in addressing challenges and opportunities related to AI in particular and rural development. Spend a little time on digital use and skills, and then some comments about being intentional and the importance of collaboration across sectors, across fields, across communities and regions. And then finally, I'll share a few examples from the cooperative extension system that I think illustrate that and hopefully tee up some of the topics for the other presenters in this session. So to start, the Southern Rural Development Center is one of the 4 regional rural development centers in the country. We were established under the Rural Development Act of 1972 and are congressionally appropriated. And our focus is on helping to build capacity for addressing rural development issues through the land-grant university system and the integration of research and extension. So we work within our regions across states. By definition, all of the projects that we're involved with involve multiple states and multiple universities. You see in the map nationally how the regions are divided, and these are according to the USDA regions. In the southern region, that includes 13 states and 2 territories and 30 universities. And so we work especially with the community and economic development specialists in those states on the extension side, and really anybody in research that is working on these types of issues. So I'm going to primarily be speaking from the perspective of rural development because of that rural focus, because it's my job and also my passion. So to jump into that, first of all, when we talk about development. I'm a rural sociologist by training. I consider myself a development scholar, an applied development scholar. And one of the things that I always think is important to emphasize is that this idea of development is contested. There are multiple meanings of what constitutes development, and some of that is subjective from our own perspectives, what kind of communities we want to live in, what we define as quality of life. It's also largely influenced by the sector that we work in or that we're concerned with. And oftentimes, we use it interchangeably. And I think for this discussion, it's important to think about these different meanings. And oftentimes, and certainly through this great conference, we've talked about technological development, AI, autonomy, from the perspective of productivity and efficiency, which obviously is very important and is linked to rural development, but not necessarily so. And so when we think about rural development from the perspective of the world that I work in, we're often focused on quality of life and how do we increase quality of life, and then also how do we improve the capacity to adapt to changes. Often those are economic changes as well as technological change. So how do we adapt to those? And so there's been discussions, for example, of workforce need changes, what's going to be the employment outlook as we change technologies. And so these are all important for communities to be able to adapt to those changes. We often refer to what we consider development in communities as well as development of communities. And what we mean here is development in is thinking about the ends or the outcomes of some type of development project. It might be infrastructure, it might be public services, it might be employment opportunities, but some kind of specific goal that we want to see in a community. But also, and I think more importantly, when it comes to these types of initiatives, is development of community. And that's where we think about the means to achieving those ends, right? Are we building a more cohesive community? Are we building community identity? Are we building relationships across lines that divide us? And if we're engaging in development projects in such a way that the community is better off, the region, the state, then we've done something above and beyond just an infrastructure project or just above a particular employment opportunity. So as I've emphasized, technological and rural development are not necessarily in tandem. We can think about all types of different tensions, and we've spoken about some of those here at this conference. And I guess my takeaway is that treating them separately can result in greater uneven development. It's not the necessary outcome, but it could be. Whereas if we give more attention to being very specific about how we want these to relate, how we deal with the changes, as I emphasized, how we think about adaptation, that we can make these better outcomes. This requires intentionality and functionality. So from the perspective of rural development, one of the things that people often think of if they're not working in this world is, oh, you mean creating urban communities. And that's, first of all, not the idea. Rural development does not have to equate urbanization. I like to share this quote from my fellow rural sociology colleagues that a critical perspective suggests the need to develop ways to promote social and economic vitality within rural communities without necessarily undermining their rurality and prescribing for them an urban future. In other words, to allow rural communities to have a high quality of life, to participate in our economy, but not necessarily to have to become urban communities in that process. And in fact, that's why the rural development centers were created in the actual authorizing language from the Rural Development Act of 1972. How do we have flourishing rural communities where people can live their lives? So a lot of my scholarship is focused on this idea of uneven development. Uneven development, basically think about the concentration of whether it's job opportunities, services, things like we'll look at with internet availability and so forth, being concentrated in particular areas. And oftentimes we just kind of treat that as what happens. But every development project involves intentionality, involves policy, it involves investment, and that as we have more and more uneven development, right, then that attracts more development, and we see greater unevenness. One of the ways that we can look at this is through net migration, right? What's the balance of people moving in or out of an area over a particular period of time? And I think this is important for this conference because it's sensitive to both technological and economic development initiatives, as well as the lack of those initiatives. So we see that people concentrate in their movements. And this kind of change impacts the needs and assets that are important for further development, which we could have great discussions on. What does this mean for schools? What does it mean for water systems? What does it mean for internet availability, as just a few examples? So this map demonstrates the net migration rates for counties in the southern U.S. over the decade of 2010 to 2020. So basically, if net migration is negative, it means more people moved into that, more people left that county than moved into that county during that time period. And if it's positive, then more people moved in than moved out. And what you see is a pretty high concentration into relatively already urban areas during that time period, and continued out-migration from rural areas. Now this ebbs and flows over the decades. We actually have data where we can look at this back to the 1950s. We can chart what's called the Great Migration, and then the rural return of the 70s. But what we've seen in the most recent decade is this concentration of net migration, net out-migration from rural communities. And one way that we can look at that is look at those rates by rural-urban status, or what's shown here are the rural-urban continuum code classifications from the USDA Economic Research Service, collapsed into 4 categories. But basically going across the chart, you see the percent of counties in each one of those categories, the purple meaning net in-migration, the yellow and orange net out-migration, and as you go across to the more non-metro and what we say non-adjacent, that means a county that was non-metro and was not adjacent to a metro area, having particularly high rates of net out-migration. This is important to pay attention to because of in these counties tend to be agriculturally dependent. And so if we are concerned about rural communities and concerned about agricultural communities, we have to pay attention to this challenge. So one of the ways we think about rural development, the needs and assets, there's a framework in rural community development that's known as the Community Capitals Framework. And the idea is to think about these different domains in community life that are referred to as capitals rather than resources or assets because they can be invested in, they can be exchanged, they can build over time, but they can also deteriorate through underinvestment. I'm not going to go through each one of these capitals. I think the names kind of suggest, and many of you will be familiar. But one of the things I want to emphasize is the growing importance of digital, sometimes called digital capital, also data capital or digital and data capital. That in our new economy, our new digital age, we can think of as really providing a base that's necessary in today's world. And so we have to think about that as a part of this issue of uneven development. So thinking about some of the challenges and opportunities with the explosive growth of digitization and AI and what the implications are for rural development, these are a few of the points that I want to share. First of all, that I think we need to respond to this tendency towards uneven development through intentional adaptation. Discussions a couple of times yesterday were brought up related to data centers and the energy needs, the water needs. For the most part, those data centers, the jobs that are being provided are not to rural communities. There are some exceptions, but rural communities are going to provide many of those resources. So that that brings up some issues that we should discuss from a development perspective and the ethics of that. We need to engage with changes in technologically driven human and financial capital demand. So thinking about that community capitals framework, what is it that we need to be investing in to help communities to adapt and participate in this new economic reality? Also, to create technologies that can be utilized by diverse systems operating at multiple scales. I know several people brought this up yesterday, that we can't just think about one type of application, one type of farm, one type of sector, but really thinking about how these technologies can be used across different systems. And I think that was a great example brought up in the discussions with the farmer panel yesterday. Also, that we need to identify backward and forward linkages to stimulate and expand economic activity. When we think about AI's potential for agriculture, we obviously want to think about the farmer needs, but also what are the businesses that can be created to support that, as well as the types of needs after it leaves the farm gate, right? What are the different job opportunities, the different business opportunities that can be created so that we can adapt to, again, to a changing economic reality. And also to enhance digital and data access knowledge and skills. And this was noted in the CAST AI and Agriculture report. Particularly, I want to focus on connectivity and workforce skills in my last few minutes here. So one thing is to think about who has access and how we continue to give attention to this. This map demonstrates the percent of households with broadband of any type. We could also sort this out by different types of broadband access. But looking at the 2023 5-year estimates, we see, again, that there's pretty high concentration of who has access into more urbanized areas. Obviously, this has been changing. It's been improving. There's no question about that when we look at it historically, but it lags. And as was brought up yesterday in one of the socioeconomic panels, our needs change, right, in terms of all this capacity. And so some communities are falling further and further behind. Again, we can look at that by rural-urban status, and we can see that the non-metro and the non-metro, non-adjacent communities are particularly still lagging behind. This is just another way of looking at that from a survey that the Regional Rural Development Centers did. This was a web-based survey, so these are people who are accessing the internet in some way. And you see, obviously, cellular rates are particularly common across areas. But again, you see that more rural areas or towns have lower access to high-speed internet. And we can also think about quality. Now, of course, this is a subjective quality because part of it's you judge quality on what you think others have. But again, we see that although people pretty much rate quality as excellent or good, that those rates are lower in rural areas and more on the fair or poor side. And then finally, we have to give attention to in particular for AI and agriculture, whether farmers have access to the internet and whether or not they're utilizing the internet. Now here we see less of a strong connection between rural-urban status, which makes sense because we have more farms and certainly larger farms, more commercialized farms in rural areas. But nonetheless, that kind of geographic concentration of who has access, we need to pay attention to. So I want to share a few final points related to this emphasis on collaboration for integrating technological and rural development, that these are complex. I mean, what brings us together in this room is across different disciplines, across professions, but that we can think about this also from a multi-community and regional collaboration, even across state lines, across the rural-urban continuum, and then across research and extension. That's the final kind of example that I want to share. We have an organization nationally called the National Digital Education Extension Team, NDEAT, works with leadership through the cooperative extension system. This is our digital continuum that's kind of the framework for how we operate. about what we should be giving attention to, what we should be researching to inform our extension initiatives. And I won't go through each one of these points, but I think the titles there at the top kind of make sense on where we're giving attention. I do want to highlight some of the successes of this effort. One of my predecessors, a few directors back, helped kind of start this work within Rural Development Extension, Bo Blue, and I found a publication when we were looking at the history of the center where he wrote an extension publication on the potential of the personal computer for agriculture. And so it's just amazing to think about us being in this room today. And he was one of the organizers of this initiative. But you see some of the things that we've been working on. We've developed digital literacy and skills programming across the cooperative extension system. And since 2019, educators have trained nearly 24,000 people around digital literacy and skills. Resource development, that training has taken place through these modules and digital skills lessons. That we've done training and developed systems for communities to plan and connect their communities better, recognizing that rural communities aren't that attractive to the providers. And so how do we organize our communities to engage with providers and to engage with policymakers to make sure that they have access? We've developed a digital volunteer initiative, and we've had 92 community members that have completed that training across 26 states to be the go-to person in their communities over these issues. And then finally, that this has been intentionally informed by research. And in terms of what are the issues, what are the different trends and strategies that need attention. And then finally, I know this has already been brought up here at these meetings. We work very closely with the Extension Foundation and their efforts, and they developed the Extension Bot, which I think is just another example of the great potential of research and extension and the extension system being a part of how we engage in AI and agriculture, and actually utilizing the extension mission and ethos to provide information to people in a way that they can trust and that they know that it was vetted through a rigorous research process. So with that, I say thank you, and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
We have a couple of minutes for questions, and if you'll raise your hands, I'll come to you.
As you know, there was a huge issue on the right to repair with the egg bot or chat bot through the egg extension. Could you think that'd be something where a farmer could use to help fix his tractor? Or do you see limitations there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know the answer. I would assume the answer is no in terms of kind of that minefield, if you will. But what that bot is using is what they're doing is they're training it only on extension materials. So there has to be research-based extension materials that it's trained on.
Other questions?
Hi, my name is I'm from University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, and I work with Extension. One of the question with the rural development, it's tricky because, for example, I am from Delmarva Peninsula, and we do not have a big airport. It's very small, and sometimes it's really a hurdle to go from that part of Maryland to another the country. Just an example. So the other issue with the rural development or rural area is if we have more resources, there is more net migration in those areas. So for example, I often think that what if we have a big airport? At the same time, I see influx of people who are working remotely in big areas, and they have their condos on the beach, especially in Delaware or coastal Maryland. And sometimes local people, they cannot afford, and it's kind of a, increase in the price of housing. So it just feels like that if we have, for example, capital resources in the rural areas, then we are dealing with the influx of migration. And that can make the urbanized kind of a setup for those areas. So I'm not sure how we can, what policies needs to be implemented to keep the rural areas as, quality rural, correct, having the quality rural characteristics, and at the same time to improve the livelihood of the local people there. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think a constant tension in community development, regional development circles. A lot of the work that I do focuses on places that are losing population, but we have, right, the flip side of places like you described, and across the South, places like in the Nashville area, the greater Huntsville area, and so forth, that have been growing so rapidly and face those challenges that you mentioned. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all. One of the things we're giving more attention to are what are the strategies where communities have been able to keep kind of somewhat stable population and incomes and so forth. But then also, the utilization of community development strategies and techniques to have those conversations locally so that people feel engaged and included in what's happening, and to be a part of that planning. So it's not to say that it should be growth or it shouldn't be growth, but rather how do we facilitate people in that community? How do we address, like you mentioned, affordable housing? How do we address, hey, we've got a water system that's under huge pressure. How do we address those issues, but doing it collectively?
Okay, thank you, John. Let's thank John. Okay, our next presenter is Colin Napier. Let me bring your slides up here, Colin. Colin is the director of the Mississippi Artificial Intelligence Network. And believe it or not, the state of Mississippi has an artificial intelligence network, which is pretty impressive. Okay, with that, Colin.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate the time and the opportunity today, and I appreciate Dr. Green, too, bringing up a lot of information I'm going to touch more on in terms of collaboration and really democratizing AI where it's accessible for anyone and everyone. And so for my role, I know not everyone in the room today is from Mississippi, but I would like to share what Mississippi is doing to address this, and maybe something you could turn around and do for your states in general, your organizations, your institutions, anybody you work with and collaborate around the United States, because AI is something that's everywhere. It's affecting everybody in real time, and as I like to say, the train is not slowing down. The innovation is happening every day and every week, and we need to stay parallel with that as we can. A short background about me: I'm a computer scientist by trade, a PhD in computer science, research in machine learning and cybersecurity. So I know the research side, the practical side, and now I'm sort of taking that and blending it into our workforce development side. And before I kind of get into the workforce component, we can really sit here and talk about AI in agriculture. And these are probably statistics you are aware of from a research perspective or doing your own reading in your own time, but we could talk about AI in agriculture in a multitude of ways. Four important ones I like to kind of touch on to set the tone is being market growth, autonomous equipment investment, crop monitoring and yield optimization, as well as sustainability and efficiency. If you've invested in the stock market or you watch the news related to the stock market, you can see the upward trends that's happening in relation to this AI bubble that we're in right now. Of course, the tech sector is seeing a lot of that growth, but it spans everybody and everywhere because AI is everywhere. So if you're not familiar, the global AI and agriculture market has continued to trend up, and we're seeing that projected and predicted over the next several years and increasing substantially. On a startup perspective, if we looked at the venture capital investments across the board, the primary focus has been AI startups. Anybody that is developing an AI product or some sort of solution that's AI enabled, and this is even more so true within the agriculture market as well. Seeing over $11 billion in funding over the last several years, and again, in relation to the market growth, seeing that starting to trend up even more. But how is it actually being applied? I'm sure you've probably heard this in the breakout sessions, maybe some of the vendors out here, but it can be used in almost limitless ways. Primarily, we're seeing it in crop monitoring. We're seeing it in yield optimization. What can we do to increase our product and what we're growing, but at the same time reduce our overhead when it comes to fertilizing, when it comes to water usage? And that sort of blends into the realm as well of sustainability and efficiency, when we can have improved data and analytics from the systems that we have, and we can be sustainable going forward in terms of what we're able to do from a carbon footprint and what we're able to produce. So I just wanted to share those few things to kind of get your mindset on how this blends with agriculture, in case you may not be familiar with some of these scenarios. But when we really talk about AI, it blends through all sectors of the workforce. Agriculture being a primary key one here in the state of Mississippi and several other states in the U.S. But it blends across the board, from healthcare to education to state government. Again, these are just a small sample of the different sectors that make up the workforce around the globe and in the U.S. and in the state of Mississippi. But you can kind of see a few examples of how it's being utilized in other areas. Revolutionizing patient outcomes, transforming our learning experiences, and many more. So we like to say we live in an AI-fueled world now, and that should not come as a surprise to anybody, because what is AI if just another layer of technology that's come to the forefront? If you're not familiar with the history of AI, it's several decades old, but obviously we didn't have the supercomputers we have today to be able to stimulate a lot of this innovation and advancement that we're seeing. So we've broken ground through a lot of research and development over the last few decades to the point of we're on this new wave of generative AI, and it's continuing to explode. So we like to say that AI is everywhere, which is true, but the workforce who is competent and capable of working with AI is yet to be discovered. We're working on pushing people not just within the IT sector, but across all sectors to gain that newfound knowledge related to artificial intelligence. We've seen a lot of projections and predictions over the last several years regarding job displacement, automation, several different factors here that are related to AI, but of course take into consideration other things happening in the economy and in the global markets as well. One popular one comes from the World Economic Forum. This survey was a global survey, and they have predictions, estimations that 85 million jobs will be displaced. But on the positive side, we're seeing 97 million new roles appear because we're creating jobs that do not exist today, because we're advancing and innovating in ways we've never seen before. We see new products from manufacturers. We see new products and what we're able to do in agriculture and beyond, but we're also revitalizing the roles that we see today because we're enabling people to be more productive and to be more efficient in what they're able to do. But to address this, to make this a reality that we will prosper now and into the future, we need to address this idea of upskilling and reskilling. Our incumbent workforce, the people who are potentially at risk to be displaced, the current workers who need those newfound skills, but also our next generation, the students who are in K-12 right now, who will graduate from high school and go to work, or go to a 2-year and go to work, go to a 4-year university and go to work. Wherever pathway that they choose in their life, they need to understand that AI will be part of their career going forward. Whether you want to classify it as a white-collar or blue-collar worker, it is part of their reality now and will continue to be so transitioning forward. So this comes with a question of how do we close the skills gap? How do we ensure that we aren't displacing people, that we have a workforce that's ready and capable now in the state of Mississippi, across all of the states represented in this room, and even globally as well. It's not just a singular problem in a specific area. It's a global thing we're trying to address. So again, my talk's going to be primarily about Mississippi because that's where I am, what I represent, and where you all are here today. But I want you to take from this something as a template for you to turn around and have conversations with your colleagues. And so when we talk about AI, and again, primarily talking to a Mississippi audience, what does this mean for me as a Mississippian? What does this mean for me as a citizen of the state that I'm living in and working in and doing research and educating people? And so this conversation came up several years ago. Not just at Mississippi State University, but at the community college, at the state level, and many more. And hey, how do we prepare the workforce? How do we become workforce ready and address this problem? And so through that, we've created the Mississippi Artificial Intelligence Network, otherwise known as MAIN, M-A-I-N. MAIN represents the nation's first and only statewide artificial intelligence initiative. Statewide meaning all of the partners you see on the screen behind me in higher education, our public community college and public university system, but also investments here from our technology partners as well, like Intel Corporation, AWS, Amazon, NVIDIA, and many more, coming together to address this through providing education, curriculum, training, all of the things that we need to turn around and make people ready and capable for this wave of AI that they're seeing in real time. We want people to be educated, to have base knowledge and skills about, hey, here's what a chat GPT is, here's how I interact with it, or hey, here's how I can go out and develop my own AI tool, utilize a chatbot, as we heard earlier, or some other large language model in that capacity. And so all of these people coming together to address this, and even more, a lot more of the big tech sector, a lot more of our K-12, our private institutions, our Mississippi Cyber Initiative, statewide cyber initiative, because again, it's affecting all walks of life, all aspects of life. And so we have a continuous feedback loop. We have the feedback from the industry side, what's on the horizon, what are you developing, what are you seeing? But we're also seeing the real time from the classroom perspective. What are you seeing in terms of a four-year university classroom, a community college, a K-12, and what can we do to have this feedback loop to ensure what we're teaching is sustainable and is applicable to what's happening now and into the future? And so again, anybody from our state government, our universities and beyond, and so through this we've created an education and innovation ecosystem throughout the state. So all of these institutions that you just saw on the prior slide, all of our universities and community colleges are represented on this graph here, showcasing what we've been able to do around the state. The first key part of that is if you want to upskill and teach a workforce, well, what do you need? A curriculum to teach them. We need information to turn around and teach them and to make sure that they comprehend it and can apply it. And so Intel was our initial partner with this, and as I mentioned, we've expanded to Amazon and NVIDIA to provide more education and resources, but something that's cutting edge, up to date, and comprehensive. It's industry knowledge that's applicable to a general population. Making it accessible for all. Again, I mentioned that term of democratizing AI to the point of it's not just for a university or just for a community college. It's for public, private, large, small, whatever capacity that they exist within the state of Mississippi, they have access to it. Maybe I'm a retiree, you know, I've retired from my career, but I still want to be on the cutting edge of things. They can access this and utilize it as well. And one key approach we've taken is what we call train the trainer, otherwise known as educate the educator. What can I do to educate you to then turn around and educate others? Again, you may be a workforce trainer within your company that can go around and teach people. You may be a traditional educator that can teach a classroom of people. It's all about sort of stimulating this environment of education throughout. On the flip side of this, one thing we've been able to do, thanks to strategic investment from our Office of Workforce Development for the state, Accelerate Mississippi, is establish AI labs around the state. Again, all these institutions I'm talking about, the universities and community colleges, setting up a lab that will help foster innovation and a makerspace going forward, something that each institution can use autonomously and build it out organically to create new programs, diplomas, degrees, and whatever they're able to do, to the point of where AI is now interdisciplinary. It's not just existing in a data science program or just in a computer science program. No, it's across the entire College of Engineering, it's across the English department, it's across the business school, wherever you can imagine. And so this is part of that growth and what we're able to do. And again, this offers AI-ready equipment, something tangible that they can physically touch and feel, but then open that up to cloud environments, something where we don't have to spend multi-millions of dollars to access the resources when we can have great partnerships with big tech to enable that. When we talk about the curriculum that we use to train people, it is comprehensive. To date, over 11 courses, what you see behind me, and many more being added over time. We talk about, hey, I know nothing about artificial intelligence. Well, guess what? You can take an introduction to AI course. Get started now. Maybe I'm familiar with machine learning and deep learning, but not so much on the generative side, this new wave that we're seeing. Well, guess what? There's a course for that. Maybe I work in manufacturing. There's a course for AI manufacturing, a course for AI and cybersecurity. So something that fits the mold of multiple disciplines. We're working on an AI for agriculture course. We're working on an AI for healthcare course, continuing to build this out where anybody can focus on a specific course that's applicable to them, or there's the more general approach that, hey, you could take any of these over here on the left side and apply that to your day-to-day life. The best part is all of this has been made free and accessible for anybody to go and access. Again, the worst thing I want to do is say, hey, you need to learn AI, you need to learn it now, and you also need to pay for it. No, that's not the approach we're taking. We're making this accessible where anybody can access it off their phone, their laptop, their PC. They can go to an institution, they can go to their community center. It's online and accessible. One part of this too is enabling people to earn certificates and credentials. A big wave now that we're seeing is beyond the degree, beyond the diploma. They want to see sort of that next level, the micro credentials. We want to say, hey, I'm a practitioner of this, I'm a learner of that, enabling people to do that. And again, very, very comprehensive. Over 700 hours of free education right behind me that a lot of people in the state have taken the initiative to learn about. So just on the K-12 side, there's a big push right now for that STEM, that engineering education to occur at an earlier age, middle school, primarily high school. But to be able to do that, again, we want to educate our educators. The K-12 community banding together to take the initiative to learn about AI. How can I apply it to myself as an educator in the classroom? How can I turn around and teach my students ethically and responsibly what it is and how they need to understand it? Because it's ignorant to think it does not exist. It does exist. The children know about it. The business world knows about it. Everybody knows about it. So what can we do to ensure we're going about it in a responsible way? Part of that is, again, offering credentials and credits to teachers. When we talk about higher education, again, tens of thousands of students and employees, full-time, part-time, retired, whatever it is, all having access to this curriculum. Again, it's not just for them to go and to take that knowledge, but it's for them to have access to raw materials to then embed that, create a new course out of it, include it into your existing course. Again, it affects everything that you're doing right now, so you need to introduce it in some manner. Beyond the education sector, if we looked at all of the other sectors, agriculture, healthcare, state government, continuing to enroll thousands of Mississippians to date, and we've provided over 20,000 cumulative hours of free AI education and training so far. So that's kind of been phase one. Phase two, what we're shifting to now is because of this success, because of this push around the state, we've been awarded a $7 million grant from the governor's office to establish an AI hub on the Gulf Coast. So that's why I primarily reside is on the Mississippi Gulf Coast through Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. And because of this great success, the governor, a lot of our state representatives and senators have seen this and awarded us to continue advancing this nation's first statewide AI initiative. What can we do now to take our newfound knowledge and let's create solutions? Let's build things. Let's do things for the state, by the state, for the betterment of the state. And we've even already started doing this in one capacity in the area of Jackson, our state capital. In partnership with our state ITS department, as well as Amazon, AWS, and Maine, we've created an AI innovation hub. Again, taking that idea of building solutions, having multiple hubs exist around the state. We don't need to just have one hub doing it all. As Dr. Green mentioned earlier, collaboration's key. And that's key to a lot of everything I'm talking about today. All of these higher education partners, the state government partners and beyond, we need hubs around the state. We need one on the Gulf Coast. We need one here in Starkville. We need one in Jackson to continue building this out. So again, using this to enable people to build solutions. And just for your knowledge from a statewide perspective, what the state of Mississippi is doing, our Governor Tate Reeves has recently issued an executive order to ITS, our state ITS department, to do inventory, to assess what's happening in the state, determine infrastructure, determine capabilities, and look at all state agencies and uplift them together. And even on the flip side, too, we just passed an AI regulation task force bill that will kickstart this month, and I'm proud to be part of that and working towards governance and regulation and ensuring that we're doing this in an ethical and responsible way going forward. So that's pretty much all I have. I open to any questions, but before you leave today, please come and see me, get a card. I have a flyer, ask me questions. I don't want this to just be a Mississippi thing. I want this to exist throughout all of the United States and to continue growing the workforce throughout. You can check out the website on there, the QR code. It's free for everybody. Get my information, and thank you all for your time.
So please raise your hand for a question. Before I take a question, I just want to say two things that are really exciting to me. One is that was the first time I'd heard about developing a course on AI for agriculture, so thanks for that, and let us know if we can help. The other thing is that tens of thousands of people are being educated through Maine, and the state of Mississippi has fewer than 3 million people, so I think it's not going to take us very long to get this out to everybody. So it's exciting. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Excellent presentation. In the workforce, there are pretty much two kinds of people: those who develop the applications and the systems, which are the people in this room, and then the ones who are going to use. Mm-hmm. So I guess all the trainings are towards people who are going to use those applications. And maybe they don't know how they work, but they just know that they work and they do something for them. It looks to me that currently what we are lacking is to know what are the different applications out there that we need to teach those people. How do you know, or do you have a catalog of what are the main AI applications that the workforce needs to be trained on today and what's going to be coming tomorrow?
Yeah, so for the courses, it does blend those two elements of the people who are developing the tools. It's a great resource for them to learn more, but also the people using it, the practitioners. But on top of determining, what people need to know and what they're doing, we do have supplemental learning beyond these courses. I call a main focus session because we focus in on practical usage of tools. I've had a lot of people ask me, what is a ChatGPT? What is Llama? What, DeepSeek? All of these different tools. And so we take time to sort of focus in and say, hey, look, here's what they are. Here's how you can use them. And so we try to offer that feedback loop of, hey, if you're out there in the workforce and you're seeing something particular happening, some sort of tool, some sort of change in scenery, whether that's agriculture or beyond, you can come to me and tell me that and say, hey, we really need to look in this. And then I turn around and work with everybody to build that out as needed. Again, what we have offering here is not just the one and only thing available because this is rapidly changing over time. So we need to meet that demand of what the workforce needs now, but then sort of have that future vision of trying to predict what do we need in the future, as well as for not just workforce development, but economic development as well. So just having that feedback loop and being sure we can address that from the developer perspective, the user perspective, and anything in between.
Good morning, Colin. Excellent presentation.
Morning.
Fantastic. I think you answered the question. I want to sort of repeat it if you can. In terms of the free courses, AI, free courses for workforce development, are those free for citizens outside of the state of Mississippi?
Technically, yes. Of course, I'm going to promote the state because that's where this exists. But we have had people from all over the U.S. sign up, from California to Arizona and beyond. So again, I know not everyone in the room is a Mississippi resident, and that's fine. If you have a curiosity, I ask, hey, go and sign up, take it, see for yourself. And again, turn around and tell your colleagues about that. Tell your state about it and be like, look, here's what the state of Mississippi is doing. We should do something like this. And I would ask that you do that.
Thanks very much, Colin. Really appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
Okay, our next speaker is Jonathan Barlow, and Jonathan is the Associate Director of the Data Science Academic Institute here at Mississippi State University. Okay, thank you, Jonathan.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I'll start with the Nobel Prizes that were issued last year as kind of a jumping off point. The 2024 Nobel Prize in Physics was really an AI prize. You've probably seen the winners, John Hopfield and Geoffrey Hinton. Geoffrey Hinton developed some of the technologies that most closely resemble neural networks and used an analogy with energy that made it appropriate to give this award under the physics category. The second prize of note that related to AI last year was the Nobel Prize in Chemistry to Demis Hassabis, Jumper, and Baker. And you've probably seen Demis Hassabis in the AlphaGo documentary where they trained a robot to beat the world's Go champion, but he's from Google DeepMind. And the reward is for using artificial intelligence to predict the structures of almost all known proteins. So a very big scientific achievement, very relevant to chemistry, but also in effect kind of an AI award. And so there's two implications to draw from this. The first is that AI, the Physics Award, shows the inherent importance of AI as a scientific achievement. This is something that we did, yay humans, we did a very good job with this one, but it's becoming clear that it's more than just another tool, that it actually is a fundamental advance in extending human capabilities in an area, just like we've extended the ability of the legs through wheels, we're now extending the ability of the mind through AI. And so intelligence becomes this thing that we have figured out a way to extend, leverage, enhance, multiply, etc. The second part of the Chemistry Award really shows you that AI is going to be central to every science going forward. Not just as a science itself, but in the doing of science, you will be using AI to enhance the methods that you use, the tools that you use, and their interpretation. The bottom is a little fuzzy. I actually photographed this from Jensen's, from NVIDIA, the CEO of NVIDIA, from his keynote address last week. But he went through all of the different applications. The question earlier about the applications in different fields, Jensen went through all of the fields of science that are using tools that rely on NVIDIA hardware and the underlying software layer for that. And the details aren't important, but it essentially covered every science that you can imagine, including agriculture. Applied AI and data science methods that employ computing and math and statistics informed by the theory and methods of every field operate against field-specific data to promote discovery, invention, and efficiency. So it's part of the doing of science, just as mathematics would be. Analogy maybe in the industrial sector with cobots. For a lot of years, robots in industrial situations have gone from being very scary and caged away from humans so that they don't harm humans to now being things that are very safe, that we operate on the same workspace. And these are called cobots in the kind of the industrial context. But our students, they have a cobot in their pocket. They are constantly informed, augmented, and inspired by AI technology in their pocket. Same thing with all kind of desk work. All desk work now will be work done in the presence of these assistive technologies that are AI, and may even be done primarily by them in some ways, but definitely a collaboration is there. So the mission of my talk here is to be very practical. I'd like to, how do you go from noting the industry need, maybe it's farming, maybe it's some other manufacturing or some other industry, how do you go from understanding that need to developing a mission-driven strategy within a university to address AI in line with your university's mission? So there's an attention to the mission of the university, of course, but then there's different contexts in which you could think about using AI, and then you need to move toward a theory of the future within that context, develop your strategy, and then have actual plans. So I'm going to go through I'm just going to do that with you in one of the particular contexts of Mississippi State, and hopefully it will be useful for other contexts. So the mission of Mississippi State, and I kind of picked out the part of the mission that's the most generic, not generic, but the most applicable to every university, to provide access and opportunity to all sectors of Mississippi's diverse population, as well as other states and countries, and to offer excellent programs of teaching, research, and service. So those three areas, teaching, research, and service, very common to many universities, and that's really the touchstone of our mission. We ask everything we do, how does it relate to teaching, research, and service? But the context really matters. What AI is and what it means for a university really depends upon where your mind is focusing. So it could just be you think of AI as a collection of tools, and this might be the perspective of someone working in academic operations. Maybe they're doing grant management and they're trying to make things more efficient. So they think of AI as a bunch of tools that will enhance and make Outlook smarter and make Word smarter, and maybe even allow us to search our documents better. So that's one perspective. Another context might be AI as a subject of or ingredient in innovative research. And this is the way that you might perceive AI if you're doing faculty scholarship, maybe you're working on sponsored grants, and this is the perspective that you would to bring to what AI is. It's actually something that you might want to research inherently or apply to other kinds of research. Another perspective you might have, or context in which you might encounter AI, is to think of it as an expected workplace competency. And this is definitely the burden of teaching and learning. You're trying to think about AI will be part of the future. How do we teach students to use it? A final perspective you might have within the university is AI and business. And this is especially important to those who are thinking in terms of business engagement, service, and workforce development. So those are the kind of contexts in which you might encounter it. So I'm going to choose a context. I hope that's okay. We can't choose every context and go through the decision tree. So I'm choosing AI as an expected workplace competency for teaching and learning. That's the main burden of the Academic Institute for Data Science here at Mississippi State. So that's the one I know the best. So our teaching and learning is our context. And the context is to teach applied AI and data science to students. And we want to be insensitive to employer needs because we want our graduates to be employed. That's first and foremost, very important. We also want to see our states grow, and we know that our work and our service and our outreach can contribute to this. We also want to be sensitive to market needs because we want students to become entrepreneurs and tackle the hardest problems with the most appropriate methods like AI. And so that's something we bring to this context. Now, once you know your context, we know our mission, we have the context in which we're operating, specifically here, teaching and learning. This talk could have been about AI and research, but I'm really focusing on teaching and learning. Then you have to kind of form a plausible theory of the future. So what is your theory of the future? This is a great tweet from Ethan Malik from this month. Malik is a commentator on AI from a business perspective. He says, compared to the investment in building intelligence, the investment in using it is vastly lagging. 1 million Einsteins in a data center, Anthropic's prediction of what they can do does not automatically accelerate science as a system or work as a set of overlapping tasks and jobs. So there is a great need in business to learn how to leverage AI. I'm sure all of the big consulting companies right now are doing pilot projects to allow companies to search their own data with AI. But who's really being productive with AI and making their businesses more productive? That's a really hard question. But I think our theory of the future must be, at least from what we can read, that our students' future employers, businesses, organizations, will incorporate AI into every aspect of operations. That's probably true, pretty uncontroversial. Businesses will need a workforce capable to apply AI and transform the business to take stock of AI and use AI. This is just a continuation of digital transformation, but now we're going to bring artificial intelligence into that process. To incorporate AI, this will mean solving several difficult problems within every business or organization. The management of data, the training of models, and the use of these models in industry-specific ways. Everyone will encounter this, no matter the industry. To achieve reliability and predictability, this will likely mean using self-hosted, open-weight models in operations, commercial AI tools in the front office, and perhaps even training and hosting their own models. Now, I'll pause just for a minute. This is where it's a little bit more controversial. This is a projection that may or may not, everyone may not agree with, but the article on the left, the enterprise verdict on AI models, why open source will win. Just really quickly, OpenAI trains ChatGPT. And there was a tweet yesterday that they do plan to release an open weight model, but they keep the weights of those models secret. It's a black box. We can send input to it and get input back from it. And just like your phone that can upgrade automatically in the middle of the night without your permission, with your permission, but it changes it in ways that you can't predict. These models can be updated overnight if they're commercial. Imagine staking your whole enterprise on a commercial model that could be upgraded every evening, and you have no idea if the behavior will change. So I don't think this is a very a big leap to suggest that businesses will probably prefer to rely on open weight models. That means maybe a company like Meta. Microsoft has some open weight models. OpenAI even kind of promised to release some open weight models. But you get all the weights for the model, it just basically tells you all of the way that the network of neurons is configured to produce output from input. You get that open weight model and you host it on your own systems, and you decide when to upgrade it. You decide when to make the changes. You can have a predictable approach to AI in your business so that you don't just have an upgrade automatically disaster every other week when the commercial model upgrades. Now, I do think that commercial models are very important. They're more powerful, and they'll be used interactively by people and by software to analyze data. But probably businesses will need to host their own models, or at least use the cloud to host their own models that do not change until they say they should change. In some industries, such as farming, this will also mean pushing AI to the edge. That's real-time AI in the field. You cannot hook a camera to a data center. You can hook a camera to an autonomous vehicle. You can hook a camera to a local computer, and that's at the edge of a network. You can't really hook a camera to a data center. That doesn't really work. So we do need the ability to run models at the edge in the field, maybe even places where there's no internet access. So based upon that plausible theory of the future, I hope it's plausible, you have to form a strategy. So based upon our mission with respect to the context of teaching, our theory of the future, needs of the business community, and our strategy to help students succeed in that likely future is going to probably involve providing access to experiential learning and instruction supported by required infrastructure, such as students are going to need access to commercial models so they can keep up and use the best models. Data and compute to train or fine-tune original models. These open source models, they're great, but you can also fine-tune them further to make the models respond more sensitively in different contexts. You can make them more polite. You can make them more knowledgeable of how to answer agricultural questions. You can make them safer in ways that you prefer that the other company did not, maybe even. The ability to use open weight models hosted in-house or in the cloud and accessible via human or computer interfaces on campus, not just typing in questions and getting responses, but writing software that uses these models to make inferences in many fields. And this is not just LLMs. This could be a protein folding model where you're trying to figure out what a compound is or what a compound is capable of. It could be a physical model that gives you some limitations from the world of physics on a particular question. It could be a medical diagnosis model. We're not just talking about LLMs. You need to be able to host these models and use them from software or interactively. And then finally, the ability to use real-time inference hardware in the field or on the desktop. And then this allows you to make some concrete plans. Okay, we know our strategy based upon our mission and the context in which we're applying it. To achieve this teaching strategy, we have to formulate the plans that are actually going to carry this out. So plan one, obviously, is curriculum. We have to, and this is happening across the United States in universities, evaluate and augment or create degree programs and courses that address the application of data science and AI. And this would really be in every field. What kind of literacy is required of AI? That's the first level. And then beyond that, what practical skills do you need to work with AI? How do you write programs that loop in AI as part of your, not just deterministic programs anymore, but programs that rely upon some sort of artificial intelligence? Plan two might be commercial AI. We need to form agreements with commercial foundation model AI creators like Anthropic, who has Claude, or OpenAI, this is GPT, to ensure our students have access to models that they will likely see in industry. The whole state of California university system has now made an agreement with OpenAI to provide that to all their students. Plan 3 would be open source AI. Acquire or repurpose hardware to self-host open weight models for student interactive and API use. We have to have the hardware to host our models ourselves or use the cloud. And then plan 4 would be edge AI. We have to acquire hardware to experiment with real-time use of local AI inference for computer vision labs, sensor processing, autonomy experiments. All of these places need the hardware. So the curriculum examples, I'll use Mississippi State as an example. This is happening everywhere. We established a BS and a minor in data science. We were the 4th in the SEC to do this. And this is a very applied, data science is a very applied discipline. Students are really learning how to wrangle data, how to understand and use data statistically with machine learning and also with neural networks. Also the modalities of computing that you might need to apply to data, like high performance computing, GPU computing, even quantum computing might be a future topic. So we have a lab that has a third of it dedicated to quantum computing. We also have a BS in computer science with an AI concentration. This is a traditional degree program. A lot of places have this, and we've had this for many years, and it has traditionally been the way that students very interested in the science of AI could pursue that within the context of computer science. We also now have a BS and a minor in artificial intelligence. This might be only 1 or 2 undergraduate degrees in the whole country that are actually a BS in artificial intelligence. This was developed by the computer science program and is a very, it's a deep dive. If you're interested in the science of AI, you can add this. You can major in AI now, actually at a university in an engineering context. We have an MS in data science for the master's level, and we also have an online master of applied data science because we were getting requests from working individuals who are in the accounting department at Mercedes, or maybe they're someone fairly high up in a company and they really need to catch up and upskill. So the online master of applied data science allows folks to get their feet wet with data, learn how to use and apply AI and data science tools. And then we have a certificate in data science pedagogy that's available to K through 12 and community college instructors and anyone else who's really engaged in the teaching of AI or data science, and that's a certificate in data science pedagogy. So we're really trying to cover the parts of the workforce, and we hope to have PhDs in these fields as well eventually to really bring the vitality and the up-to-date research in these areas. Now, on the commercial foundation AI model access, I mentioned that the California State University system is bringing AI to all 500,000 students and faculty. That's the great kind of thing. It became common a while ago when you're looking for colleges that there would be a climbing wall, a picture of a climbing wall, and your sons or daughters would love to go to a school that has a climbing wall. I wonder if in the future you'll pick your university based upon the amount of AI that they give you access to. It's very possible. Definitely data would be a really attractive thing. And then what are the implications of differential access? Meaning you have students in your classes, one of them has access to the free model and one of them has access to the pro model. Well, that's a huge advantage in thinking and in learning about any topic. And so we do right now have a situation of differential access. Those who can pay $20 a month will do it and benefit from it, learn more, produce better papers, produce better code. And so how can we tolerate that kind of situation? We have to think about our tolerance for it. The next part would be infrastructure for open weight AI. And just to clarify, 2 types of computing really apply to AI. There's the training side, where you're building a model, and this is where all the money's invested. This is why it's very hard for anyone but the large, well-capitalized companies to amass enough hardware in one building to train a model. And that's the training side. And you take a lot of data and you build a model of some topic. Once you have the model trained, then you need to host it somewhere where it can be accessed 24 hours a day through the internet for inference uses. And this is the use of a model in the field, just interactively or through programming. Allows us to make these models available for use, and they could be used in any kind of world. And so there's 2 types of computing are important to keep in mind. It's difficult to achieve both of these in the university context. I did see University of Michigan does provide quite a lot of access to open source models for their students. And so they have this UMGPT, which they have an agreement with OpenAI to host a certain version of the model, but they also host open weight models for students to use on campus. And these are not just language models. They might be coding models, they might be image generation models, and I mentioned other kinds of models you might want to host. This is the University of Florida version of that. They have, if you look on the left, this column is hosted through their large system of GPUs donated by NVIDIA. And so you can see they list a large number of models, just a few of them like Llama. This is a large model from the company Meta, a very high quality model. There's let's see, some of these models are from, there's one from France. Here's one that's really dedicated to generating software code. And look, Stable Diffusion, they even provide image generation models for students to use as well. And then through Azure, which is the cloud, Google and Amazon, they offer other models through cloud computing as well. A couple of years ago, Fei Li, who's an AI pioneer at Stanford, she said not a single university today in America can train the ChatGPT model, not even version 3. There is no university that has enough hardware in the whole United States of any kind of university that could do that. No one has that amount of hardware. If you think in terms of training these models, the pre-training stage is when you take massive amounts of data and you are training that model, and that's out of reach for universities. We just do not have the hardware. No one can do that. But the next stage is the fine-tuning stage. This is where they teach the model some manners, make it helpful so that it answers questions well, and they also bring in the safety aspects usually in the fine-tuning stage. We could absolutely do that at a university. You can load in a model that if it has 70 billion parameters, that means you probably need maybe 14 gigs of RAM to load it in at 16 bits, and then you can fine-tune that model. You can fiddle with the weight slightly to bias it in a good way toward the good and not toward the answers you don't want it to give. So that's very possible to do in a university context. And of course, you can use a finished model. I put a halo around the finished model. It's all kind, and you can use that in this context. The final kind of computing you need at a university would be inference at the edge. If you're in a field in a rural area that has no internet access, spotty cell coverage, and maybe no access to the internet, you're going to have to use models locally, and they have to have enough, your hardware at the edge has to be powerful enough to do this. You can see NVIDIA does have quite an investment in this area. They have a Jetson computer, which is used in many agricultural drones. It's used in many other kind of field applications and robots as well. They also just announced the NVIDIA DGX Spark last week. It's 128 gigabytes of VRAM, which that indicates to you that they expect you to run a model locally on your desk. It's the little silver one at the bottom next to the laptop. I mean, it's very small on a desktop, and you can run a model. Now, it's $4,000. That's what we're talking about, that little computer. And then also, I see a lot of people using these Mac Minis because you can string them together. They have a unified memory architecture that allows you to load these large models, even in that context. So it's a more budget-friendly way to do it. But we need computing at the edge to run models locally in certain contexts, even to connect a camera to do computer vision work. You cannot connect a camera to a data center very easily. So we've moved from our university mission. We've chosen the teaching context. We have a theory of the future. We have a strategy that flows from that about what we need, and then we made plans to actually carry that out. And I think this is really what we have to do in every area of every university, from teaching and research to the service aspect, to the business outreach, even in operations. Really, that's the flow the decision-making flow for deciding what infrastructure we need and what curriculum changes to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thanks to all our speakers. Really excellent presentations. We probably have time for one question, but I'm hopeful that our speakers may be around for a little bit in case you want to pull them off to the side and have a little bit of a chat. So who has a question for Dr. Barlow?
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. I was wondering if the Data Science Academic Institute is also working with the extension to help farmers, because sometimes there is so much out there in terms of AI. There are so many apps, so much technology in terms of hardware, and it's overwhelming for farmers to decide which one is the best fit. So maybe extension, they can help farmers to customize their plan. And of course, they need also training in terms of how to help farmers in terms of AI. So yeah, I was wondering if the institute can help extension.
We'd love to. We're very new, so we haven't had a lot of chance to work with a lot of people, but we have done a forestry project. I know that's not with Extension necessarily. And we've also worked on a project looking at curriculum in agribusiness programs, but we'd love to talk. So yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that. Great.
Jonathan, thank you very much.
Thank you all.